Like you said, my name is Mauli Williams, and here in that introduction, I think I need to update my bio since I'm talking about almost, 10, 15, 20 years ago. But I always like to start these talks, and I know you guys probably know this, but just to make sure we're all on the same baseline, what is the Board of Curators and why do you care that we exist? Like I said, I went to undergrad in law school at Mizzou, graduated in '98, and I have been in Kansas City since 1998. That's a long time. But since I've been in Kansas City, I've gotten to know a lot of people on this campus and have been around and met a bunch of you. But like I said, I was born in 2019. Well, what is the Board of Curators? The Board of Curators is constitutionally provided to be the governing body for the University of Missouri system. Meaning we serve at the pleasure of the governor, confirmed by the Senate, but we are delegated to oversee the entire system, meaning it's our job to make sure that we do what's best for the system and then making sure that we take care of each individual campus as well. So the easiest way to tell people is like, every time somebody gets mad and sues the university, they actually sue me. They sue the individual curators because we are all from each congressional district, and there's all this constitution about how many people can be from what district, whatever. Once we are elected, confirmed, or nominated, confirmed by the Senate, we then have our fiduciary duty to make sure we're running these places. And we delegate that to what used to be a president. We would delegate the task to the president, and then the president of the system could then delegate certain duties to deans and chancellors. Well, I sat on the review commission of the system in 2015. And one of the things that we said in that very long report was that we don't know that the system can function that way, at least from my humble opinion, having lived through this system since 1990. We didn't know they could function that way because the individual chancellors needed more control. Meaning, what's good for Kansas City and UMKC may not be the same thing that they need to be doing in Raleigh. And we saw this tension because we had a president that was in Columbia, and then you had a chancellor that was a mile and a half away. And if you didn't like your answer you got from the chancellor, you ran to the president. Well, the other campuses couldn't do that because their chancellor was on their campus and that's who I was there. So in 2019, when I came on the board decided we had a chancellor leave at Columbia, and we decided that was the opportunity to reevaluate the system. And here's where I get to UMKC. And as the new guy, you come in, you know everything. And so I came, that was supposed to be funny, but apparently nobody's got it. And so I came and said, guys, we did this beautiful report. And my theory is that you don't need a president of this system. You need a president that's a figurehead that can go speak on behalf of us at the legislature. But if we were to delegate power down to the campuses and give the chancellors more authority, we would see more growth in our campuses. So we did that study. And some of you probably got on, I personally sat in, I think it was something like 75 listening sessions to listen to people from every campus and hear what their thoughts were with this idea of making the president the head of the Columbia campus, but then delegating a bunch of the authorities that had been given to the president and making it the chancellor's obligation. Basically giving each campus more autonomy. Gary Forsey, who sat on the review commission with me, is a great Kansas City and had lots of people wanting to talk to and sat in on the UMKC administration when we were coming up with this plan. Why does this plan matter to UMKC? What that plan did is give you the opportunity to see what you're seeing now. Is that we said, no longer, does the UMKC campus, and since I'm here, I'm using UMKC as the best example. UMKC will set its own agenda. UMKC will have its own profit and loss statement. UMKC's chancellor will be delegated to make decisions that are in the best interest of UMKC and Kansas City. The chancellor in St. Louis will do what is best for his, or actually it's her campus, and you will make sure, and so that way they were meeting the needs of the St. Louis community and that university. Raleigh, same thing. But we created a council of chancellors to where the four would sit on a regular basis and talk about this is what we're doing on our campus, this is how we make the system stronger by doing those things, and then here are the issues that we need the curators to weigh in. We kept the authority to make sure that, hey, if you're gonna make major changes, things of that nature, we wanna hear about it, because like this, we wanna have a discussion. We also set it up to where, like, I'm here in Kansas City, Todd Graves is in Kansas City. We started being more, I don't wanna say more active on campus, because I don't know what other boards did, but we tried to be more involved with the administration on your local campus, i.e., I regularly have meetings with Mauli. I regularly have meetings with different deans, with the athletic director. Whoever wants to talk to me, I try to get on this campus and see him. And as he will tell you, I'm a hard person to catch because I travel all across the country, but I have a great staff that will say, Michael, next Saturday you're gonna be here, or whatever. And so we try to do that, but we try to make it to where curators were no longer just, oh, these people that govern the board, but it's somebody that Mauli can call or text me and say, hey, I've got this idea. We wanna do this accelerator program, and here's how much we've developed it. Before we float it, come sit down and let's talk. And I want you to meet with some of the people that are designing this. Okay, let's sit down and talk. And so we tried to delegate that authority so that it would no longer be, the one thing I've heard, whether I was a student in Columbia, whether I was living in Kansas City, whether I'm on the board, is that all the benefits were going to Columbia. We weren't getting, Kansas City wasn't getting its fair share. Kansas City wasn't getting the opportunity to grow their student population to 12, 14, 16,000 undergrads. You know, they weren't getting the resources or the help they needed to do those kinds of things. Now I'm not hearing that anymore because you guys have a fantastic board of trustees that are helping get the resources, the benefits that Mauli needs. He's got the support of the other chancellors and comes to us and says, here's what we've all agreed are our priorities. Well, that's great. Here are the system's priorities. But he also still comes to us and says, but these are the top 5 priorities for UMKC. We understand that here's how we help the system. We understand that's how we help the resource aspects of it. Here's how we help with fundraising. But here's what I want my campus to be. And he became not just someone who was reporting up to a president, he became the, in fact, CEO of this corporation, which was a change if you were here, 15, 20 years ago and you saw how the chancellor had to get permission to go lobby, permission to talk to him. That was the oddest thing in the world when somebody told me, well, they can't talk to you without letting so-and-so know. I'm like, why? You're a grown man or grown woman. If you want to talk to me, just text me or call me and say, Michael, get on the phone. But we got rid of a bunch of that hierarchy so that the chancellor could communicate directly with the president, other chancellors, the board, their team, whoever they wanted to communicate with. There was no longer that dotted line reporting all of that nonsense, which gave Mauli the chance to come up with the programs you see now. Mauli's goal, everybody knows Mauli's from, well, he's not from Texas, but his prior experience was in Texas. And he grew that campus's student population. That's what makes him so attractive. He grew that student population to where it wasn't just a commuter campus, it was a residential campus. And I think that's his goal for UMKC. And I think you're starting to see that with putting students on career tracks and saying, look, you want to be a business major, you think you want to go to law school, well, here's how we help you do that, and you do it in 4 years. Because if I can get you to graduate in 4.5 years, you know what I just did? I cut a crap ton of student debt. And I don't want kids to come out with an education and so much debt that they're just hamstrung and would have been better off not going to college. That was always my goal. The other part that Mauli has done that's just been absolutely brilliant is addressing, well, he's also addressed food insecurity, but addressing that gap that was preventing kids from graduating, i.e., I'm not going to graduate or I'm not going to return next semester because I have $500 of unpaid parking tickets. Or I couldn't afford to pay my book bill, and so, $700 is, hello, who's this? $700 is keeping me from enrolling next semester. We tried to come up with programs that address that debt, because one of the most shocking things to me was that we had students that had gone through 2.5, 3 years of school, had garnered all of that debt, had received their Pell Grants or other loans or whatever they had, and they had invested so much time and then they weren't being allowed to re-enroll because of some nonsense about a parking ticket or some nonsense about a student fee or whatever. So we tried to take all those barriers, and what that did is that increased his rate of graduation from the neediest students. You know, when you give people food, and you give them resources, and you give them education, they're gonna change their trajectory. And that's what we were trying to do. And so one of the questions I think for me was, well, how does the system look at what this campus is doing? Well, I can honestly tell you, we don't really look at it because we're a part of it. And so I'm not sitting in a meeting, you know, we have 5 meetings plus all of the special meetings it seems like we have every other week. But I'm not hearing about it at the end. So it's not that when someone asks me, well, how do you feel about UMKC? Just like, well, I got to sit in a room and hear while they're doing it or why they're doing it, and I got to be a part of that questioning part. And I'm one of those people that I know I'm never the smartest guy in the room, but I kind of know the right questions to ask. And Mauli puts the right people in the room that can answer those questions. And so he's not coming to the board, you know, 3, 6, 9 months later and saying, here's what we're doing. We've been his partner in all of this, so we know what he's doing. And so all we're saying is, hey, how do we help you make it better? How do we help you get what you need to achieve? And so it's not, to me, it's a different dynamic than when I first started. We're more partners with the campuses as opposed to being those stuffy people that you have to talk to every now and then, and they're just gonna say no. Well, I think I was wondering if Mauli was gonna be here because he'd probably heckle me from the back, but I don't think he comes in thinking he's gonna get a no, because we were part of it, so we know where we're going. And so I'm like, well, Mauli, but you know that gives you flack, because when we're a part of this and we're saying, hey, I think I can get you X, or I know we can do this, or I know we can do that, but we can't do this. He's going back to really smart people saying, I don't think we can get the board to do this. And they're giving him 15 reasons why the board has to do it, and then he's coming right back. So it's making more work for him, but we're getting it done on the front end and not trying to fix something that we think is broken. We're trying to work together to do that. I think the other issue they wanted me to address is, being the person that lives here, how do I see UMKC's role in Kansas City? I don't know that there is a more integrated campus into a city than we have with UMKC. One of the best examples was I got a call that said, hey, you know, we're gonna make a pitch to I just keep doing the water, sorry. We're gonna make a pitch to go to a different conference. Well, okay, what is it you need from us? Well, we don't know, but we think we might, you know, get some Kansas Cityans, and we may get some people from the board to come. And then we're gonna go make this pitch. I'm like, okay. And he's like, well, do you think any curators would go? And I'm like, well, who do you want to go? And within 20 minutes, I called the chair and said, hey, they want to make this pitch. You know, we've talked about this. The chair of the board was there. I was there. The local curator was there. The mayor. I mean, we left at dark 30, like 5:30 something in the morning. The mayor rolls up and gets on with us. The head of the sports commission was there. You know, Kansas Cityans were there. This community stands behind UMKC because UMKC involves itself with the community. That is the best example to me of all he did is make a call and everybody was there. But I can go to see, oh, the mayor's doing this event, and you name the event, and I don't really care which one you name. I can guarantee you can walk around that room and say, well, that's a UMKC person. You know, this is the deputy chancellor. This is the communications director. Here's some faculty and staff. It amazes me at how much involvement UMKC has with what decisions are being made in Kansas City, and how Kansas City asked them to be involved. I remember when I was a lawyer. I guess I still am, but I was just a lawyer going through this whole big fight about, and I think you kind of brought it up when the firefighters were going to become part of the city and the paramedics were going to become part of the firefighters. You know who were there? UMKC law professors. They were there helping. They were there helping work through this as people negotiated what was going to happen. I'm like, so I've seen this from just being Joe Lawyer. I've seen this from your former dean being involved in the bar association or advising city councilmen, or it's UMKC has done the best job I've ever seen of not being antagonistic with the city, but working with the city. Now, I will grant you, I'm not saying that you're always saying yes, and you could be telling them, you're idiots, why are you guys doing this, this isn't gonna work. Or, hey, we want this, and the city says no. I'm not saying that you don't disagree with them. What I'm saying is, you're a part of the decision. And the one thing that I always tell people is, as long as you're in the room, you can help shape that decision. And UMKC has made it their point, at least as far as I've seen it, if I'm missing something, somebody tell me, to be a part of the discussions, to help lead the discussions, and to make sure, I was talking to somebody like, I'm always worried about the unintended consequences of what I do. And a person who shall remain nameless, because I told this story, and the president was there, and he did not find it nearly as funny as I did, but I thought it was hilarious. One of my other brainchild was working on, and nobody throw anything at me when I say this, was trying to modernize our benefits and trying to modernize leave. And so I always have listening sessions and listen to people and say, here's what I think, here's how we can modernize this, and it will be better for everyone. One of the consequences is that we negotiated a certain amount of days that were set for sick leave or whatever. We negotiated just a general pot, which meant some people thought, or some people did, lose some days. That's not very popular. But I made the sausage, I'm gonna sit there and listen. And so I'm at some bar event, and we come out with our final proposal, and I'm standing there. Oh, it was a Christmas party. I was at the Kansas City Metropolitan Bar Christmas party, and I'm standing around doing something, and one of my favorite people on the planet, who I've known forever, comes up to me and she says, I thought it was a good idea when they put you on that board, but you're a moron. And of course my response was, well, hey, it's great to see you too, but what am I moron about this week? And she proceeds to tell me that how would I let these people take their days away, and how these benefits are horrible, and da-da-da-da. And she was not happy. And people are like looking, and I'm like, no, that's how people, when you're upset about something, you're gonna be, and I'm like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. You and I are gonna go have coffee. And I'm gonna tell you why I spearheaded this, and why I, think that this is the right thing to do for the long term of the system and for each campus and the individuals and all that. And her response to me was, wait, you spearheaded this? You're not nearly that stupid to have spearheaded this, because this is just the worst. I just went off. But to me, at least I was listening, and then once we sat down and we talked, she understood why we did certain things. But it was the unintended consequence to her was she had a specific example of why this would not benefit her and why it would actually hurt her. Not physically hurt her, but affect the way she did things, because she had counted on this program to do certain things. And I went back to the board and said, look, I had this conversation with someone that's affected by this. And here's what her problem is with how we did this. What is our solution to this problem? And they said, well, Michael, we can't fix that because it's not intended to do this, that, and the other. It's intended to be used this way. And if she's using it that way, then she actually has more benefits than they're not. And I'm like, okay, here's her number. I want you to call her and explain this, and I want you to answer all of her questions. She felt better because she knew someone listened. And I'm like, I can't promise you we're gonna change it, but I can promise you I know the people to go get right answers. And so I tell that story because your voices matter. And if we're doing something stupid, or we're doing something wrong, or if I'm not paying attention to the unintended consequences of merging things or changing things, I want somebody to tell me. That's why I give everybody my cell phone number. I'm like, I'm not that hard to reach. I can promise you, I might not be the one to respond. I might have, Brittany or Carlos or someone from the university call and say, we understand this is your question. Michael can talk to you on this date. Does that work? Or he wanted me to talk to you. If you still have a problem, he wants you to text him back. So if you have a problem, if you have a question, if you have something that I'm just completely messing up, I want to hear it, because the only way we learn is for people to tell us what we don't know and what we're getting wrong. I think I was supposed to answer some other questions. Did I miss something big?
Let's see what the questions are that people now have for you.
Okay.
I'll come and sit with you.
No,
And I have my microphone too, if anybody has questions out here, just raise your hand and I'll come over.
It's on, okay. Who can I give the word first? And if no one starts, I'm going to start first. Maybe we'll get things going. Yesterday, March 31st, was Trans Day. It recognized the contributions of trans people in our society, and immediately thought about some of Ron DeSantis' initiatives and actions like Don't Say Gay and his action against the LGBT community in Florida, against teaching Black history and imposing change at the governing board of New College. Now, my field is biology, and it's a scientific fact that there is a biological fluidity between male and female gender and sex. It is not a black and white issue. To deny that and prevent research or teaching of such biological reality is, in my opinion, wrong. Similarly, there are graduations and nuances in psychology, sociology, and physiology in these kind of issues. Politicians should not take their black and white view of these matters and impose them on us. And since you, as representing the Board of Curators, are not only governing us, giving us our academic freedom, but also protecting our academic freedom, how would you respond if these type of tendencies or policies or issues come up on Columbia campus, on the campus here, or system-wide? Because that's not an answer that Mauli can give, although he will have a voice. But it's the Board of Curators ultimately that has their political voice.
That's like a law school exam question, and there were so many portions of it that I want to address, but I'm going to boil it down to this. I think the one thing that our board has done, not only are we trying to be more, more relevant on the campuses, i.e. we're not just here for one meeting a year, shake 3 hands and leave. We want to be on this campus, we want to be involved in the Board of Trustees, we want to be involved in meetings and decision making, is so we know what the temperature is on each campus. Whenever there are political powers that come in and say, you guys should or should not be doing this, it was COVID, it was DEI, it is, hiring. I mean, people get involved in the most minute issues of how we run the campuses. And our job is to first and foremost make sure that we take care of our faculty, staff, and students. Making sure that we do things that give them an environment where you can teach, learn, research. From the political side, there is that concern because I think somewhere in the number changes every year because COVID had, care funds and all of that. I think the number is like 22% of funding will come from the state. And the state has the power to control that purse string. Our job is to balance all of those things because academic freedom is completely different. Telling you what to teach in your class, telling you that's academic freedom, and the legislature and everyone else has to understand that you don't get to impede upon that. And there are some exceptions when you're, just doing something that would be illegal, all of those types of things. And so our balancing act is to make sure that we are educated on what the issue is and the unintended consequences, and that we educate the legislature on why what they're doing will have unintended consequences for the university system. And so that's kind of the mamby-pamby, wiggly-waggly lawyer answer, just to say, we do everything on a case-by-case basis. And, we are appointed, part of those appointments are, you can only have one more Republican than Democrat, or one more Democrat than Republican. That's why we have an uneven number of 9. So that each governor could never mess up that balance. Because we don't want, political fears of the left or the right or whatever to then start adjusting how we teach kids, how we get kids to learn. Our job is to provide an environment where they're free to communicate, to learn. I keep pointing at our table, but we had a conversation about how discussions are no longer about, hey, here's my position, here's your position. It's, well, here's what I think, then you're an idiot and I hate you. And we can't get into that in academics. And so when the governor, has his, this is my platform, this is what we're going against, and here, there's a bill right now that we also get a summary of every bill that would affect higher education or affect the system, or could affect students on campus, whether it's from guns, whether it's from freedom of speech, whether it's from DEI, whatever it is. And there's a DEI bill that's pending right now. And so we get opinions from lobbyists, we get opinions from our lawyer, and then of course there are 3 lawyers on the board. We all have our opinions and resources, and we try to evaluate those and say, here's what we think is best, and here's why we need to be involved in that discussion. Here's why we need to get people down there right now and say, hey guys, if you do this, here's what the unintended consequences are, and here's how you're going to affect us. Meaning that we want to be involved in the decision, just like we're asking professors, just like we're asking students to be involved in the decision. We have to be involved in the decision to help shape it in the best possible way we can.
Thank you. Okay. Questions for Curator Williams?
Wow, I've never not had questions. I'm going to call on Jill's mom if nobody asks me a question. So there's an attorney that office is 2 doors down. No, there's 1 door in between us, so 2 doors down, whose mother is here today. And so we have to take a picture before I leave so I can send it to her. But if she doesn't ask a question, then I'm just going to call on her. I'm not going to name anyone.
You've already asked me questions. I told you I retired because everything was changing.
Don't you want to keep up with the change?
I do. I realized, maybe 5 years into retirement, I needed to. Took a little break, but I will say, I think that what they are doing, I told Michael that I listened to the provost talk, and I was like, wow, I knew things were different, but also after being in admissions for so many years, I thought, wow, this needs to be done. So I was quite pleased.
Yeah, I can tell you, part of their marketing when they became, and this is being recorded, so Moon, I'm sorry for saying this out loud. But part of the marketing when they came up and they just start calling themselves, the University for Kansas City or Kansas City, that did not go over well. The Columbia campus was not happy with that. But you know what they did? Moved on, because Mauli had made that decision that this is how we were going to brand, and we were going to rebrand. And it's helping in their recruiting. It's helping in their branding. You saw, I think it was Brandon. Brandon called me and said, we're having UMKC Day on the plaza. You need to be here for at least this many hours. Okay, tell me where to be. And they were doing everything UMKC, because UMKC is going to own Kansas City. We're not, I told her, one of the biggest problems that Mauli and I talk about is the number of students that are leaving Kansas City to go to Springfield. We are one of Missouri, sorry, I'm old. I always want to call it SMS, but we are one of Missouri State's biggest feeder communities. What is it that Missouri State has that UMKC can't provide? Now, some people say, well, there are certain kids that want to get out of the city. Okay, other than that, you should be coming to UMKC over going to Missouri State, and that's his big push. It's if we get those 2,000 to 3,000 students, now mind you, there's 4,000 that are going, but if we can get 2,000 or 3,000 of those, look at how big you increase your student population over a 4-year period, a 6-year period. You are creating an environment here that if you're in the Kansas City Metro, why do you need to go anywhere else? What is it you need that we can't offer? And we're gonna get it done for you in 4.5 years, and you're gonna be started on your career. And so that's one of the pushes that he instigated, and it's been working out great.
Good. By the way, I was amazed when you started your talk that you were the one instigating the change in the relationship of the campuses versus the Board of Curators.
Well,
It was very good to hear, because I've seen some of the effects, but I didn't know that we have here in front of us the one that started that change.
well, and we do everything as a board, so I can't, it was just, we had the report that we did, and Gary Forsey was on it. I'm trying to think of who else from Kansas City. It would have been me and Gary. So the Senate and the House appointed this commission to evaluate the University of Missouri system and how we move it forward. And of course, you know, you make one of those big reports and it's thick and it's bound, and then it goes in a drawer. Nobody pays it any attention. But thankfully, some people did pay attention, and like that tension that was created. And so when we said, hey, let's look at this and let's do this, everybody's like, well, if you guys have already done the legwork, let's just delve into it. And since I had been on that commission and was on the board, then I got the pleasure of losing 6 months of my life while we did that. But it was indeed fun to meet so many people and talk to so many people, and I think this works. I think if you ask Mauli, you know, he came shortly before I did, so we kind of lived this together. I think if you ask him without any curators there, without any of his bosses there, without, you know, just in a quiet moment that he will never leave the room, what he thinks, I think he will tell you, I love choosing my own destiny. I love that I run this campus, I make decisions for this campus, and we move it forward. Now, do they still have to run things by us? Yes, but he's not running it through 16 levels to get to us. I made this decision, here's how I want it to move forward, here's what I think is best, and let's go. Test optional. He came to us and said, I looked at our competitor schools in urban environments, they're all going test optional. We want to do it. It was the only school to go test optional on a permanent basis, UMKC. Then others followed because their competition started doing it, but everybody else is on a year by year, do we want to keep test optional or not? Is it what we have to do to stay competitive? Where UMKC said, no, here's what we're doing. And we're like, well, okay, it's your campus, you run it, Mauli.
Okay. I see Doug Swink nod. He obviously knows the intake and the registrar aspect of our population. And it's always good to hear that we're holding our own and growing even relative to Columbia.
Yeah. I mean, the board, we get inundated with information, but one of the things we get that's at the top of our email every Thursday is, here are the numbers, here are the number of applications, here are the number of acceptances, here are the number of people that paid deposit, here's how we're trending based on last year, here's what this means for our student population, because I think anybody in higher education knows that there's a cliff coming. And that cliff is that Missouri is about to have, or is starting to decline on the number of high school graduates. In order for people, colleges, universities to stay viable, as that cliff comes, you've got to get a higher percentage of those in-state graduates. You can always fill in with out-of-state, but your bread and butter will be getting a better percentage of the high school graduates. As that number goes down, you've got to go up, or you're going to have losses. And I think some of the smaller schools throughout the state that aren't part of the system are really worried about that. Because right now they're, CARES Act saved a lot of, we can also get national reports on how schools are doing. The CARES Act saved a lot of colleges and universities. I don't know what happens when that money stops flowing. I think, we had 10 schools that might have disappeared in the state of Missouri, but also as part of our 2015 report, one of the arguments is we have too many colleges and universities, and we don't focus on the needs of the areas. We're just, just building colleges because that's an economic engine for that area, and so that'll be interesting, at least from a case study point, as to what happens when graduation rates are down, but there is no artificial funding from the federal government, which has been being filtered to the colleges and universities.
Okay. Last time, question.
I just have a quick question. Why are the graduation rates from high school going down in the state of Missouri?
The population decline.
Oh,
Yeah, Missouri's about to see a big, it's been forecasted, it's been seen for years. If you look at the number of people or number of children entering kindergarten, that number's way down. And,
so it's just fewer students.
fewer students, yes.
It's not like fewer people are just quitting high school or something.
Right, the raw number of graduates is dropping.
Okay.
And, there are all kinds of other pressures and things, and, if you can go make $1 gazillion when you're 14, running a YouTube channel, God bless you, there ain't that many of you. It's just that there are fewer people entering kindergarten, which affects the number of people that are gonna end up going to college. And the really smart mathematicians in here can tell you how they forecast out that far, but they have, and it's hitting us now, so we all know it's happening.
How much is the university receiving from the state? Has that gone down as well?
Well, it's interesting, and we are seeing the best funding from the state that we've seen in decades. I don't know, but the caveat for me to that is that COVID had a lot of unintended consequences. We shut down campuses for a long time and went online, so you learn how to do online learning. But the federal government gave us a bunch of money. Like, the CARES Act was just funding that was going to the states. States can push that down to colleges, universities, and so that's to me, that's an artificial number, because I can budget for an extra, $20 million this year, and even last year, and maybe next year. But after that, that $20 million disappears, and you've spent it, and you've gotten used to spending it. So now, when they cut that back, your percentages go from 22% to 16% or 17%. It's not because they cut the funding; it's because the money from the federal government stopped passing through, and it's going to be, I think, for a lot of colleges and universities, that it's going to be a nightmare.
So the University of Missouri used it for a lot of maintenance, one-time money, and buildings, and not to add faculty.
Correct. So a lot of people were like, well, you got this money, why are you not spending it? I'm like, because it's not a budgetary item. One of the fears that I have, and Kansas City has, I love this city, I've lived in this city, so I understand its problems. Kansas City, there's a reckoning coming for just the city of Kansas City and probably other major cities around the country, is because there's so much deferred maintenance on, I don't know what our water system is gonna look like, because these pipes are breaking every day because nobody's done the maintenance and upkeep because it's not popular. It's not popular to fix your roads and potholes and all of that. And as I popped coming up here last week, I broke 2 rims hitting a pothole. I showed somebody the picture of me having my car towed because I'm like, it's just horrible. But nobody cares until you hit it, and nobody wants to spend money on it. So what we decided was, if you're gonna spend this CARES Act money, we're gonna spend it on the deferred maintenance to get us caught up. Because that's unpopular to say, hey, we should be giving bonuses. I'm like, no, those bonuses aren't gonna help us maintain. And so fixing buildings, fixing labs, providing much needed upgraded computers, providing resources that had just been going unfunded. That's why we're not as worried about not getting CARES Act money, because it helped with things that needed to be done that you didn't have the money to do, but you kind of put a Band-Aid on and keep going. We try to pull as many Band-Aids off and say, okay guys, you're structurally sound, now keep going. And use your money instead of the money you were trying to put in for deferred maintenance, use that to build what you need. Because we're gonna take care of this deferred stuff. And each campus came to us with a list of, here's how much money we think we're getting from CARES, here's the deferred maintenance that we need to address, here are the problem children that we have on our campus. It might be, this building is full of asbestos, we've gotta get that out of here. We've gotta modernize these labs. Whatever it was, they set their own priorities by campus.
Thank you. Okay, then thank you for this conversation.
No problem, thank you for having me.
And I hope we can count on you to take care of us in the future. And if one thing is, our population of students may be going down, but the UMKCRA population better go up, because there is more and more with our color hair. Okay, then as the last thing, I want to congratulate all our award and scholarship recipients, to thank you for joining us today at the spring luncheon, and just warn you or tell you that May 2nd we'll have an upcoming breakfast program meeting where we'll have the Dean of the College of Humanities, School of Humanities and Social Sciences, talk about her plans for her new academic unit. And actually, I last night heard the title, Public Facing Research with the Human Face, is what she's going to talk about. That concludes our program. I wish you all a nice April Fool's Day and lots of good weather, and see you next time.